Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lieutenant General Semonite, as we spoke just before this meeting began, I do look forward to meeting with you in my office. I understand we have a get-together sometime after the 1st of November. But I also wanted to take this opportunity, sir, to thank you for your 40 years of service, which includes tours in Bosnia, Afghanistan, Iraq, as well as multiple civil works and disaster response assignments with the Corps. So thank you for your service. Mr. Fisher, I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank you and your team, including Mr. James. And this thanks is probably a little bit overdue for your successful efforts to provide the initial FY19 funding and budget for an additional $3 million in FY20 for the Missouri River Basin snowpack monitoring system. The capability that this provides will enable more precise forecasting and better decision-making by the Corps' Missouri River Water Management Team. I do look forward to receiving an implementation plan brief from Major General Spellman in just the next few weeks. At times I've been tough on the Corps, but I want to publicly thank both of you and the 35,000 employees for the good job that the Corps has done in really managing a very difficult year on the Missouri River in the aftermath of the floods this past year. It is not done yet, but clearly the Corps has taken a lead role in trying to make improvements and in trying to respond in a timely fashion to some real heavy precipitation, probably record-breaking precipitation in the Missouri River Basin. My questions, first of all, to both of you gentlemen, the Corps of Engineers has been grappling with a proposed so-called surplus water rule for the better part of the last decade. I myself don't even agree with how the Corps uses the term surplus water. Personally, I think it's offensive, and I think a lot of our citizens in the West feel the same as I do. They view it as an unlawful taking of what is constitutionally protected right of the states to the natural flows of the river systems. The Flood Control Act of 1944 highlights the preeminent role of states and localities with respect to water rights. Surplus water appears undefined in Section 6 of the Flood Control Act. In the decades since the passage of the Act, with the exception of the previous administration, the Corps has declined to define surplus water. Yet in December of 2016, the Corps sought comment on a proposed surplus water rule. The original deadline for this action was February of 2017. The comment period was extended, but a decision, which was scheduled to be made in August, was deferred for 6 months. Mr. Fisher and General Semonite, it was never the intention of Congress to federalize all of the water in our country's major rivers. I'm going to ask you, where are we now with this proposed rulemaking action, and how will you balance the responsibilities of the Corps as authorized by Congress with the rights and interests of the states? Mr. Fisher.
So we certainly don't want to federalize waters, as you hinted out just then. Where we are with it right now, we're in the federalism process, right? I'm not sure. Originally, we had done all the gathering of feedback from states and tribes around the country. That's where we are. We're getting all the input we possibly can. You referred to the 6-month extension. When we get to that point, hopefully we'll be prepared with all the input we've heard from states, governors, tribes, to be able to move forward with a decision on that.
And, Senator, on the Corps side, Secretary James has delegated to General Spellman the approval of reallocation reports and surplus water contracts just in the last week or so. So we are right now in the middle of writing implementation guidance as to how we're going to do that, and we would like to think we can get that done in 60 days. There are 10 contracts that are still been out there. Our goal is, as soon as those implementation instructions are done, to be able to act on those 10 and get the books clear so we can then continue to be much more responsive on supply contracts.
Gentlemen, can you imagine if we talk about the natural flows, is there any possibility that the Corps considers the natural flows of the river to belong to anyone except those defined by Constitution and Western water law? Is there any question at all about that?
No, there's not. Like I said, we're not looking for the federal government to take control of these things. We certainly recognize states' rights in this.
They clearly recognize the natural flows of the river do not belong to the federal government, and they clearly recognize that they do belong to the states and local entities.
Yeah, there's complex, right? You put a reservoir in and it changes the natural flow, right? So we have to consider all those sorts of things. But yeah, natural flow, correct, is a,
Let me just follow this for a second. If you've got a natural flow of a river, you haven't added anything to it. That natural flow is still there, and that's all that there is there. How do you come up with surplus water? It's part of the natural flow. Even if you may have the opportunity to slow down its release, it's not surplus, and it clearly belongs to those states from day one in this country. And I have yet to figure out why in the world it's taken so long for the Corps to figure that out. And I just, I want you to be aware that this is one that is really important to the western states. We have exactly the same constitutional rights that were granted to the original 13 states. And this is one that needs to be repaired and fixed and dealt with as soon as possible. And I don't understand any reason why it's taken this long to get this far. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Rounds.